Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Countess Elizabeth Báthory's gruesome and notorious legacy came to light in either December 1609 or 1610 when Count Georgi Thurzo, acting on orders from King Matthias, conducted an investigation at Szegedi Castle in Hungary. There, he discovered Báthory directing a torture session involving young girls. Although she had been infamous in the region for torturing and murdering servants and peasants, her noble title and influential relatives had shielded her from consequences. Her heinous acts led to her being associated with the early vampire myths. Elizabeth Báthory was born in 1560 on a family estate in Nyírbátor, Royal Hungary. She spent her early years at Ecsed Castle. Her father was Baron George VI Báthory of the Ecsed branch of the family, and her mother was Baroness Anna Báthory, the daughter of Stephen Báthory of Somlyo, a prominent figure in Transylvania. Elizabeth was the niece of Stephen Báthory, who became the King of Poland, the Grand Duke of Lithuania, and the Prince of Transylvania. During her childhood, Elizabeth experienced multiple seizures, possibly due to epilepsy. At the time, epilepsy symptoms were often referred to as falling sickness, and treatments included using the blood of a non-sufferer on the lips of an epileptic or applying a mixture of non-sufferer's blood and a piece of skull as the episode ended. Some sources suggest that Elizabeth's later cruelty may have been influenced by her family's upbringing, implying that she was trained to be cruel. Elizabeth was raised as a Calvinist Protestant and received an education that included Latin, German, Hungarian, and Greek. She came from a privileged noble family with wealth, education, and a high social rank. At the age of 13, before her first marriage, Elizabeth was rumored to have given birth to a child, supposedly fathered by a peasant boy. The child was said to have been given away to a local woman trusted by the Báthory family, who was paid for her actions, and the child was taken to Wallachia. However, the validity of this rumor remains disputed, as evidence of the pregnancy emerged long after Elizabeth's death, mainly through peasant rumors. In 1573, Elizabeth Báthory was engaged to Count Ferenc Nadasdy as part of a political arrangement within the aristocracy. They were married on May 8, 1575, in Verano, resulting in combined land ownership in Transylvania and the Kingdom of Hungary. Nadasdy's wedding gift to Báthory was the castle of Szeged in the Little Carpathians, along with the Szeged country house and surrounding villages. After their wedding, they resided in Nadasdy's castle at Sarver. In 1578, 3 years into their marriage, Nadasdy became the chief commander of Hungarian troops and led them in wars against the Ottomans. During this time, Báthory managed the family's estates and affairs, including providing medical care and defending her husband's properties from threats, notably during the Long War. Báthory and Nadasdy had several children, including Anna Nadasdy, who married Nicola VI Zrinski, and other known children such as Orsolya, Catalin, Andras, and Pal Nadasdy. There are also mentions of a son named Miklos Nadasdy, but his existence is uncertain. Ferenc Nadasdy passed away on January 4, 1604, at the age of 48. The exact cause of his illness, which began in 1601, remains unknown, but it left him permanently disabled by 1603. Before his death, he entrusted his heirs and widow to Georgi Thurzo, who would later lead the investigation into Elizabeth Báthory's infamous crimes. Between 1602 and 1604, rumors of Elizabeth Báthory's atrocities had spread throughout the kingdom, leading Lutheran minister István Magyari to make public complaints against her. In 1610, King Matthias II assigned Georgi Thurzo, the Palatine of Hungary, to conduct an investigation. Thurzo appointed notaries Andras Kereszteri and Moses Ziricki to collect evidence, starting in March 1610. By October 1610, they had gathered 52 witness statements, and by 1611, this number had grown to over 300. Báthory was accused of killing daughters of the lesser gentry who were sent to her gymnasium to learn courtly etiquette. Witnesses described various forms of torture, including the use of needles. Some individuals named relatives who had died while under Báthory's care, while others reported seeing signs of torture on the bodies of victims, some of whom were buried in graveyards, while others were hidden in unmarked locations. On December 13, 1612, Nicola VI Zrinski confirmed an agreement with Georgi Thurzo regarding the imprisonment of Elizabeth Báthory and the distribution of her estate. On New Year's Eve of the same year, Thurzo visited Szeged Castle and arrested Báthory, along with 4 of her servants who were accused of being her accomplices: Dorotea Semtesh, Ilona Joe, Katerina Banica, and Janos Ujeri, known as Ibis or Fico. Thurzo claimed that he found one dead girl and another living girl in the castle, but there's no evidence to suggest that he inquired about what had happened to the living girl. Although it's commonly believed that Báthory was caught in the act of torture, she was actually having dinner. Thurzo initially declared to Báthory's guests and villagers that he had caught her red-handed, but she was arrested and detained before any victims were discovered. Thurzo discussed the next steps with Báthory's son Paul and her sons-in-law, Nicola VI Zrinski and Georgi Drugeth. Her family, who ruled Transylvania, aimed to avoid the loss of Báthory's property due to a public scandal. Initially, Thurzo, Paul, and her sons-in-law planned to send Báthory to a nunnery, but as news of her actions spread, they opted for strict house arrest instead. Most witnesses testified that they had only heard accusations from others, but did not witness the crimes themselves. The servants' confessions were obtained through torture, which is not considered credible in contemporary legal proceedings. They were the king's witnesses, but were subsequently executed. Ilona Joe and Dorotea Semtesh had their fingers torn out with red-hot pincers before being burned alive. Janos Ujeri was executed by beheading due to his youth and perceived lesser culpability. His body was later burned on the same pyre as Joe and Semtesh. Another servant, Urtsi Majorova, initially escaped capture but was burned alive after being apprehended. Katerina Banica received a life sentence after evidence showed she had been abused by the other women. The accusations of murder against Báthory were primarily based on rumors, and there is no documented evidence of local complaints about the Countess. During that time, even minor offenses typically led to written complaints. 2 trials were held following Báthory's arrest, one on January 2, 1611, and the other on January 7, 1611. The highest number of victims mentioned during the trial of Báthory's accomplices was 650, but this number was based on the claim of a servant girl named Susanna, who stated that Jacob Silvasi, Báthory's court official, had seen the figure in one of Báthory's private books. However, the book was never revealed, and Silvasi never mentioned it in his testimony. On January 25, 1611, Georgi Thurzo wrote a letter to King Matthias, informing him that they had captured and confined Elizabeth Báthory to her castle. This confinement was part of a coordinated effort involving the investigation into her crimes and a political struggle with the Prince of Transylvania. Elizabeth Báthory was detained in the castle of Szeged for the remainder of her life, where she ultimately passed away at the age of 54. Thurzo's letter initially stated that she was locked in a bricked room, but other sources, such as written documents from a priest's visit in July 1614, suggest that she had some degree of freedom within the castle, resembling house arrest. In September 1610, Báthory had written a will in which she bequeathed all her current and future possessions to her children. In the last month of 1614, she signed another arrangement, distributing her estates, lands, and possessions among her children. On the evening of August 20, 1614, Báthory complained of cold hands to her bodyguard, who reassured her and advised her to rest. She went to sleep and was found dead the following morning. She was initially buried in the church of Szeged on November 25, 1614. However, due to villagers' objections to having the Countess buried in their cemetery, her body was reportedly moved to her birthplace at Eched, where she was interred in the Báthory family crypt. Today, the exact location of her remains remains unknown, but it is believed that she may be buried within the church area of the castle at Szeged, as there are no markings at the church or castle to indicate her grave.